During the divorce, my husband wanted to take custody of our daughter. You're just a housewife. You don't have the ability to give her a better life, he shouted. Our daughter gave me a look and sweetly spoke to her dad. Dad, I also want to live with you. But Mrs. Zhao wouldn't be happy about that. How about I stay with mom, and you pay more child support each month? I'm afraid mom will starve me. Chapter 1. Raphael angrily grabbed our daughter and took her downstairs. They purposely avoided me, and I couldn't bring myself to follow them, feeling like it would be awkward. I could only watch from the second-floor window as my ex-husband, fuming, lit a cigarette. Camila, do you really want to live with your mom? She's been living with me for so many years. Just a housewife who doesn't know how to do anything. What kind of future will you have if you stay with her? His voice was irritated. But our daughter, with an innocent face, replied, but Dad, Mrs. Zhao doesn't like me. So, even if we have a conflict, it's fine for me to suffer a little. But Mrs. Zhao is pregnant. What if it affects my unborn brother? We're both your children. You can't treat us differently. Her innocent words pierced Raphael's heart, and I could see his face flicker with guilt. After all, he hadn't even divorced me yet, and the other woman was already visibly pregnant. Our daughter unintentionally hit the mark with her words, causing Raphael's heart to ache. I couldn't bear it anymore. I numbly sat back down on the sofa, tears streaming down my face. My mother-in-law, who had been watching the drama unfold, sneered, "What are you crying for? Look at yourself. No job, no connections, and still wanting custody of your daughter. If you really loved her, you'd let her choose a better life." At some point, our daughter and Raphael had gone upstairs. Raphael looked at his mother helplessly and said, "Mom, can you stop saying anything?" Then he saw me, eyes red from crying, and turned his head, feeling some guilt. "I've already talked to Camila. The custody of her will go to you. The car and the house we're living in now are yours. I'll also give you 300,000 in cash, and 5,000 a month for living expenses. Sophia's pregnancy is already obvious, so we need to divorce quickly." He paused for a moment. "Let's do it tomorrow." I didn't say anything, though I was the one who had decided to divorce. The salary card was still in Raphael's hands, and I had no concept of how property would be divided. At this moment, our daughter spoke up. "Dad, you should keep the car. You're the big boss at the company. How could you manage without it?" Hearing her words, my tears flowed even more freely. They always say that daughters are their father's little soft spot, but it seemed that even if she stayed with me, her heart still leaned more toward her dad. And now that Mrs. Zhao is pregnant, it would be more convenient for her to have a car. Why don't you just sell the car and give mom the money instead? The car was worth more than 500,000. So you can just give her 60,000, right? Raphael hesitated for a moment, but, seeing his daughter's innocent face, he gritted his teeth and agreed. "Tomorrow at 10, remind your mom not to oversleep." Raphael and my mother-in-law left. As I heard the roar of the car engine downstairs, I couldn't control myself any longer and broke down in tears. 3 years of love, 10 years of marriage. We met in college and supported each other through the best, most innocent years of our lives. When we got married, we promised to grow old together, never to part. But in the end, this road has come to its end. Chapter 2. Mom, my clothes are a bit torn. My daughter's call pulled me out of my distant thoughts. Following her gaze, I saw 2 small holes at the hem of her dress. "I'll go find some needle and thread to fix it," I said, hurriedly standing up. But at that moment, my daughter seemed a little aggrieved. "Mom, we're about to be rich. Can't we just go to the mall and buy 2 new outfits?" That made sense. She took me to a nearby mall by taxi. However, instead of heading straight to the children's section, she started looking through the women's clothing section. Stopping at shop after shop, she picked up a coat and asked me to try it on. "Mom, you shouldn't always wear those dull colors. This bright one will really bring out your charm." I took the coat and looked at it. It was a beautiful light blue. But after we got married, I'd started to prefer darker colors for practicality, something easy to handle while doing housework, and had unknowingly gotten used to it. At my daughter's insistence, I bought the coat for myself and chose 2 sports outfits for her as well. On the way back, I couldn't help but say, Camila, even though your dad and I are divorced, that's between us. You shouldn't let our issues affect you too much. He will always be your father. Mom, I won't hate him. I just hope you won't either. People have to face new lives and not stay stuck in the past. Under the streetlights, my daughter's bright eyes sparkled like stars in the sky. That night, I couldn't sleep. And in the morning, Camila came to knock on my door. Mom, it's time to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Hearing her voice outside the door, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of emotions. Was she more eager about the divorce than I was? I opened the door. This is an adult matter. You should go to school now. She looked up at me with a hurt expression. Mom, I've been on winter break for 3 days. I was taken aback. I had been so caught up in my own emotions that I hadn't even noticed she was on winter break already. I patted her head, about to apologize, but she interrupted happily. Mom, if you really feel guilty, how about taking me out to play? I heard this winter is really cold. We could go somewhere warm. How about it? Looking at my daughter snuggling into my arms, her sweet, playful demeanor made my worries fade away. I smiled and agreed. We went to the Civil Affairs Bureau, and to my surprise, Raphael was already there, with a scowling Sophia behind him. He couldn't wait to start staking his claim even before the divorce was finalized. Good morning, Mrs. Zhao, my daughter said, sensing my discomfort and taking the initiative to greet Sophia. Mrs. Zhao, you're here with Dad in this cold weather? Be careful. Don't freeze my little brother. Raphael, look at your daughter, Sophia said, her expression a mix of indignation and pity as she patted her pregnant belly, hoping Raphael would come to her defense. But my daughter's eyes quickly filled with tears. Dad, Mrs. Zhao misunderstood me again. I'm just worried about my little brother's health. Mrs. Zhao can neglect her own body. But what about the baby in her belly? What if he gets cold? Raphael shot a disapproving look at Sophia. What harm could a child have in her heart? She's just worried about you. Sophia tried to say something, but Raphael impatiently waved his hand. All right, go wait in the car. Chapter 3. I thought that once the divorce papers were signed, I could leave immediately, but to my surprise, there was now a 1-month cooling-off period for divorces. Raphael drove over. Don't stand out here in the cold waiting for a taxi. Let me take you both home. I had planned to maintain my dignity and refuse, but my daughter had already opened the car door and pushed me inside. Yeah, it's too cold. Besides, Mom hasn't officially divorced Dad yet, so why not let him take us home? My feet are freezing. I sat in the back seat with my daughter, and Sophia, who now occupied what used to be my spot in the front seat, was with Raphael. She spoke with a playful tone. Honey, to celebrate your divorce, how about we go for a big meal? Raphael nodded, and Sophia continued, feigning hesitation. Where should we go? French cuisine or Western food? At the perfect moment, Camila leaned forward, her big innocent eyes wide open. Mrs. Zhao, let's go to that French restaurant we went to today. It was really delicious. Whenever there's anything to celebrate at home, my dad always takes me and Mom to eat there. Oh, by the way, the membership card for that place is under my mom's name. Don't forget to mention her phone number when you go. Seeing the dark expression on Sophia's face reflected in the rearview mirror, I couldn't help but smile. My daughter went on. Mom, how about we vacation in Sanya? It's got the sea, the coconut trees, and tons of hot guys with six-packs walking around shirtless. Look at how stable Dad and Mrs. Zhao's relationship is. Maybe you'll meet someone new there. Raphael glanced at me through the rearview mirror and suddenly asked, planning on going on vacation? I didn't feel like talking to him much, so I just nodded and pretended to fiddle with my phone. Raphael continued. Sanya sounds good. I have a friend there who owns a hotel. It's a 4-star place, and they can let you stay for free in the best suite. Really? Camila leaned in excitedly. I knew Dad was the best. Raphael, holding the steering wheel, reached over and patted Camila's head. You're my little sweetheart. The father-daughter pair looked so loving and sweet, which made Sophia's face darken even more. Chapter 4. The day after we returned home, my daughter and I began packing for our trip to Sanya. She was thrilled, It had been so long since we last went on a vacation. She spent the entire afternoon planning our itinerary and even carefully picked out 2 swimsuits for me. At 14, she was still full of childlike energy. And when it came to playing, she seemed to never run out of it. After breakfast, we ate the hamburgers and steaks the hotel had prepared for us, then dove into various water activities. By the end of the day, I was exhausted and sore all over. But the sound of my daughter's laughter kept me from thinking about anything unhappy. After we returned from Sonia, I spent several days just lying in bed, finally sleeping soundly, no longer experiencing the insomnia I had when I first got divorced. I had planned to rest for a few days, but then my daughter came up with a new idea. Mom, why don't you learn to make desserts? The ones outside are both expensive and bad. I gave her a helpless look, even though I was still immersed in my sadness. It was clear she was trying to help me move past the divorce. Although I made a mistake in choosing my husband, at least I still had a daughter who was on my side. What more could I complain about? Mom, you should really learn to make desserts. The ones outside are overpriced and terrible. I looked at her helplessly again, despite my sadness. It was obvious she was trying to help me recover from the shadow of the divorce. Though I had made a mistake in my choice of husband, at least my daughter and I were on the same page. What more could I ask for? Though the new year was approaching, I was still planning to find a job. Raphael was quick to transfer a total of 90,000 yuan into my account. It sounded like a lot, but without a steady income, it wouldn't last long. After all, my daughter's various tutoring fees and extracurricular classes alone cost nearly 200,000 a year, not to mention everyday expenses. However, after being a full-time housewife for so many years, I had lost touch with the workforce. I couldn't even approach any reputable companies. So, I tentatively discussed with my daughter the idea of looking for a job nearby. Perhaps as a sales clerk. The salary wouldn't be high, but as the saying goes, even ants can make a meal from small things. My daughter thought for a moment, then said seriously, "If you want to work, of course, I'll support you, but finding a job is like getting married. You shouldn't settle just because you're in a rush." She was still a kid, but the maturity in her words made me want to laugh. I flicked her nose playfully. "You little adult." She proudly lifted her chin. "Come on, admit it. What I said makes sense, right? Meaningless jobs and relationships are just a waste of time." I thought about it, and she was right. Seeing me soften, my daughter seized the opportunity. "Mom, let's put the job search on hold for now. But there's something we really can't delay." "What is it?" "Of course, it's stopping my tutoring classes. I'm going to turn into an idiot if I keep studying like this." Under her playful coaxing, I reluctantly decided to temporarily stop her piano lessons and math classes. We'd resume them in the summer, and I agreed to let her relax during the winter break. My daughter was overjoyed and immediately got to work on 2 sets of English exercises. Through this experience, I started to consult her more often about many things. We began making decisions together, and gradually, life started to feel like it was getting back on track. Chapter 5. One afternoon, I was uploading a video of a dessert I made onto the platform. My daughter leaned over and asked, "Mom, what are you doing?" I replied, "You know your aunt is a food blogger, right? Last time she edited a video of the desserts I made, and a lot of people liked it. I'm thinking of taking her advice and trying to become a food blogger." "Mom, this is better than working in an office. I can help you run the account." To be honest, I was quite tempted. Young people these days, after spending so much time on video platforms, know the ins and outs far better than we do. My daughter was always very sharp, and I had the skills. I wasn't hoping for millions of followers. If we could just reach 10,000, maybe get a few ads now and then, it would be enough to supplement the household income. Then I'll ask Auntie for advice. If you really make it big, we could support each other's accounts and boost each other's traffic. With that, my daughter eagerly called my sister. If there's one thing I've gained from years as a housewife, it's my cooking skills. My desserts, whenever I gave them to relatives or friends, were always praised. With the help of my daughter and sister, my personal account slowly gained traction. I started by sharing dessert making processes, and I also began making pastries and sending vacuum-packed treats to fans in nearby provinces. Over time, The shop accumulated a loyal customer base. Plus, with the ad revenue I got each month, my initial income reached around 3,000 yuan, small. But for a beginner, I was happy with it. A month passed quickly, and Raphael still hadn't brought up going to the Civil Affairs Bureau. I had to take the initiative and contact him to finalize the divorce. However, when I called, Raphael hesitated on the other end of the line. Sandra, I regret it. I don't want to divorce. My heart skipped a beat. It was a little embarrassing. But Raphael was the one who had asked for the divorce in the first place. I begged him to reconsider, but that only strengthened his resolve. There were moments in between when he wavered and even considered not divorcing. But by then, I had become the one insisting on it. At first, I hesitated about the divorce because I couldn't bear to let go of the years we had spent together. But after thinking it over, I realized there was no love left between us. Every day when he came home, it was nothing but complaints and criticism. He'd call me a lazy housewife who didn't know how to do anything. If there was anything I couldn't bear to part with, it was being his free maid. I couldn't even ask for an extra 100 yuan for groceries without carefully watching his expression. Now, with Sophia's belly getting bigger by the day, I knew he couldn't wait any longer. His sudden change of heart on the phone left me feeling confused. After some probing, Raphael finally said in a tone that seemed almost too sentimental, I still have feelings for you. It was strange, even though I had no feelings for him anymore. Hearing him say that nearly made me tear up. In the first few years of our marriage, things were so different. Back then, when his career was just starting, he may have had business trips. But the first thing he did when he landed in any city was call me, and he would bring me little gifts when he came home. When did it all change? I couldn't quite pinpoint it. Seeing that I had become quiet, Raphael thought his heartfelt words had moved me and continued with his shameless pleading. Sandra, let's not divorce. Camila is in her adolescence. She needs a complete family. I let out a cold laugh. If you really cared about our daughter's feelings, you wouldn't have had an affair during our marriage. The damage has been done, and it's irreversible. People must face the consequences of their own choices. Chapter 6. After hanging up the phone, I couldn't calm down for a long time. So, I secretly asked a friend to look into what had been going on with Raphael lately. To my surprise, I learned that the clothing factory he managed was facing a serious cash flow problem. It turned out that about 2 weeks ago, Sophia, claiming she was too pregnant to work at the front desk, had quit her job and insisted on working at Raphael's factory. But she was nothing more than a pretty face with no real skills, and she liked to boss around the older, experienced workers. In just 1 week at the factory, Sophia had managed to drive off several seasoned workers. These workers had been essential to the factory's growth, but Sophia didn't understand their value. She thought they were resisting her authority, so she made life difficult for them until they quit, and even failed to give them the most basic severance. Years of loyalty had been burned, and these workers left with hard feelings. The products they made after being forced out were either poorly stitched or had design issues. As a result, the clients rejected the goods and demanded compensation for the losses. These clients were new partners, and they didn't even offer the chance to return the goods, they simply canceled the order. Raphael had to dig deep into his savings to cover the loss. And even then, the damage had been done. The real problem was that the workers Sophia fired were key figures who had helped Raphael build the business, and many longtime clients were brought in by them. Now that word of the factory's troubles had spread, many of these old clients were unwilling to continue working with Raphael. This put Raphael in a tough spot. It seemed that his reason for wanting to delay the divorce was that he realized Sophia was completely unsuitable for life and business. He probably didn't want to pay the high alimony once we divorced. Either, to get his business back on track, he needed far more than just $1 million. So the house that was part of our divorce settlement became his most valuable bargaining chip. But old habits die hard. Wasn't he always bragging about how beautiful and caring his mistress was? Well, if she was so great, let her handle bringing those old employees back to the factory. He was trying to turn the tables and drag me into it. But I wasn't a fool. Since Raphael was intent on dragging his feet and didn't want to divorce, I was prepared to go through the legal process if necessary. And then my daughter handed me the key evidence. Evidence of Raphael's affair. It was from the conversation my daughter had with Raphael downstairs last time, where, under my daughter's guidance, He confessed to his affair and even admitted that the mistress was pregnant. I never expected my daughter to have kept such evidence. I sent the audio clip to Raphael, making it clear that I had recorded the conversation at the door and didn't want my daughter involved in any of this. Soon after, Raphael showed up at my door, looking at me with disappointment in his eyes. "We've been through so much together. Do you really have to take it this far?" I looked at his face, one that had become increasingly foreign to me, and coldly replied, "Raphael, don't talk to me about feelings. The one thing we don't have between us is feelings." In the end, we went to the Civil Affairs Bureau and got our divorce certificate, although his factory hadn't closed, with no orders and the employees on break, and with large penalties to pay. One thing after another had piled up, and Raphael looked like he had aged 10 years. He no longer had that confident, proud look from when we first got married. Chapter 7. When we parted. Raphael shamelessly tried to pull me into his car. One day as husband and wife. 100 days of kindness, and we still have a daughter together. "Let me take you home. Can't I?" The pleading in his eyes was obvious. From what I knew of Raphael, this wasn't about him missing our relationship, it was because he needed something from me. I was curious to see what he would say next. Once in the passenger seat, Raphael began nervously rubbing the steering wheel. He didn't say a word the entire drive, but just before we reached my house, he tentatively asked, "About the 1 million I owe you, can I give it to you later?" I nodded, seeing his hopeful expression. I said, "But I'm not a philanthropist, and there's no emotional bond between us. Every month you delay, there's an additional interest, and this interest will be notarized and added to the contract to prevent you from defaulting. Do you have any objections?" My assertiveness caught Raphael off guard, and he gave a bitter laugh. "Sandra, you've changed so much. You're not like before." I smiled. "Raphael, we're divorced now. Please call me by my full name. You can't forget. Before we got married, I was the second in command at the company. I willingly gave up my career to return to the family. But that doesn't mean you can ignore my sacrifices. I didn't regret choosing you, but I'll never go back down that road again." After the divorce, I poured my energy into growing my account. My daughter even enlisted some of her classmates to help promote it. Since the account's traffic was growing, the platform also supported me. By the third month, my followers had reached 50,000. I even hired a college student to help edit my videos. They were quick-witted and better than I was at creating catchy titles and video thumbnails. With my fan base steadily growing, my work became busier. Sometimes, I had to create 2 or 3 new desserts a day. I attended training sessions and listened to my fans' suggestions to improve, while my career was taking off. Raphael's life was becoming a disaster. He promised Sophia many benefits in order to get her to apologize, but with her spoiled nature, she only spoke a few soft words. After being rejected, she recklessly caused a scene at the elderly workers' home and even broke their television. In the end, Raphael had to pick Sophia up from the police station and pay for the television he had broken. As they left the station, Sophia continued to curse, and Raphael, furious and disgusted, turned and kicked her on the calf, shouting, "You ungrateful fool! Shut up!" Sophia, already heavy with child, lost her balance from the kick and fell hard. She miscarried. The baby had been the last thing keeping Raphael tied to Sophia after the factory incident. But with the baby gone, he immediately broke up with her. He left without a second thought. But Sophia, due to the late stage of her pregnancy, suffered uterine damage during the abortion and would never be able to have children again. When my daughter heard the news, she excitedly took me out to a fancy dinner to celebrate. "This is karma," she said. I nodded, taking her out for a lavish buffet. Those who betray others are never spared by fate. Chapter 8. What gave me a headache was that ever since Raphael broke up with Sophia, he had been sticking to me like a stubborn leech. He frequently sent flowers to my home, even ordered flowers online. And on my birthday, he bought me a gold ring. It was truly laughable. The once despised yellow-faced woman, for whom he wouldn't even buy a single piece of clothing, was suddenly showered with romantic gestures after the divorce, as if he were trying to win me back. Just like in the early days of our relationship, my daughter noticed something was off and cautiously asked me, "Mom, Do you think you'll get back together with Dad? I stared blankly at the gold ring in my hand. I remember when we hadn't yet divorced. I had subtly expressed to Raphael that I wanted a ring. At the time, gold prices weren't high, and a ring weighing about 2 grams would cost just over 1,000 yuan. Yet he had angrily scolded me, accusing me of spending money while staying at home and not making any of my own. He claimed I didn't understand how hard things were for him outside. It was laughable that after all these years of marriage, I didn't even have a single piece of jewelry I could show for it. The dowry and 3 gold pieces we received in our first year of marriage were all used to support Raphael's initial business venture. Later, I found out he had bought Sophia even more expensive gold earrings. Sometimes, it's not that men are unwilling to spend money. It's that, deep down, they don't think you deserve it. I glanced at my innocent daughter. Deep in my heart, I longed to give her a complete family. Camila, for you, Raphael is a good father. But for me, he is not a good husband. I can't take away your right to have a father and to show filial piety, but I hope you can support me in not getting back together with him. As I said this, my mood sank, but my daughter gently hugged me at that moment. Mom, if I only thought about myself and didn't consider you, then I would be the selfish one. What I've learned is that a woman, first and foremost, is herself. Only then can she be a mother or a wife. Tears involuntarily rolled down my cheeks. I hadn't even realized how insightful and mature my daughter was. Despite her small size, with my daughter's support, I finally made up my mind to have a clear conversation with Raphael. I arranged to meet him at a nearby restaurant. I had no intention of bringing my daughter, as I had already decided in my heart that if Raphael was unwilling to communicate, I wouldn't hesitate to confront him. But I didn't want my daughter to witness such an ugly scene. However, my daughter insisted on coming with me. When we arrived at the restaurant, Raphael had already been waiting at the table for quite a while. On the table was a bouquet of roses he had carefully selected. He had even replaced his own identity ring with the couple rings we had bought when we first started dating. As soon as he saw me and my daughter walking in, his face lit up with excitement. Before he could greet us to sit down, my daughter, with a smug look, said, "Dad, Zhao's wife really doesn't know how to take care of people. How did you become like this so soon after the divorce? You look like you've aged 10 years. It seems that young and beautiful women are like thorny roses. Not everyone can have them." Raphael's smile froze on his face, and it was all too obvious how ridiculous it looked. Chapter 9. Throughout the meal, Raphael watched me and my daughter interact intimately, feeling like an outsider. Several times, Raphael tried to join in on the conversation between me and my daughter, but each time, my daughter effortlessly shut him down with a cold remark. Raphael's tears, as expected, started to fall, and he kept muttering about regret and wanting to go back to the past. My daughter, emotionless, handed him a tissue. "Dad, no one will wait for you to stay stuck in the past." I sighed, preparing to take this opportunity to talk things through with Raphael. But just then, a disheveled figure suddenly rushed out from around the corner of the restaurant. Without hesitation, she grabbed a hot dish from the waiter and threw it straight at me. I screamed, but I couldn't dodge in time. It was my daughter who, in a swift move, pulled her coat from behind and held it in front of me. I was unhurt, but my daughter's hands were badly scalded, turning red and causing me great pain in my heart. At that moment, I finally saw who it was. Sophia. Raphael had pulled her back, but she was still hysterically yelling, "You shameless fox spirit, you've already divorced him. Why are you still clinging to my man?" This outburst instantly caught the attention of several onlookers, and some even took out their phones to record. Raphael was holding Sophia back with one arm, while rubbing his forehead with his free hand, clearly irritated. "How many times do I need to tell you? We're done. Who would want to live with a troublemaker like you? We lost the child. I've already compensated you. Besides, as a third party who broke up someone else's relationship, what right do you have to call anyone a fox spirit?" Sophia, with tears in her eyes, looked at Raphael and said, "You think money can fix everything? I'm a woman who can't have children. Who do you expect me to marry now? I don't care. You have to be responsible for the rest of my life." My daughter impatiently interrupted, "That's between you two. It has nothing to do with my mom. Please don't drag my mom into this. Mom, let's go. They're getting what they deserve. We don't need to be involved in their mess. I was about to leave with my daughter when I saw Sophia pick up a shard of broken porcelain from the floor. With a twisted expression, she lunged at my daughter. Why can you have a daughter? And I can't? I'll make sure you end up like me, without a child. I instinctively stepped in front of my daughter to protect her, but the shard cut across my neck. In a matter of seconds, everything started to blur. Just before I closed my eyes, I thought I heard my daughter's desperate scream and saw Sophia's frantic figure. Chapter 10. I don't remember how long I slept. I only remember waking up to my daughter's red, swollen eyes. When she saw me awake, the worry she had been holding on to finally eased. Fortunately, Sophia had only grabbed a broken piece of porcelain from the floor and wasn't trying to kill me. The shard wasn't very sharp, and it only grazed my collarbone, not my carotid artery, so I was fortunate to be alive. But the scar was inevitable. My daughter clenched her teeth, saying she was going to send Sophia to prison. But after everything that happened, I truly didn't want to have anything to do with Raphael anymore. The man who spoke about remarrying me hadn't even had the decency to defend me in a crisis. How could I trust such a man with my future? Only someone like Sophia would treat him like a treasure. I told Raphael to send me the remaining money he owed, and I didn't care about the interest anymore. After all, where could I buy another life? At first, Raphael said he didn't want to pay, but when he saw the evidence of his infidelity in my hand, he reluctantly scraped together the money. I heard he even sold the house where his elderly mother lived and some of her jewelry, which made her furious, yelling at him on the street. But none of that concerned me anymore. I arranged for my daughter to transfer schools, sold our current house, and moved to another city to start a new life. After all, it was too unsafe to stay here. Before I moved, Sophia came to my door again. I didn't press charges against her. If a woman like that ends up with nothing 10 years later, who knows what she might do to me and my daughter? You can't corner a dog in a dead-end alley. I've always understood that. Before Sophia could speak, my daughter beat her to it, addressing her directly. Mrs. Zhao, my mom didn't press charges against you because she understands how hard it is to be a woman. But you can't be ungrateful. Does your mess have anything to do with my mom? She's just a pitiful woman who got betrayed by her husband. She cut ties with my dad a long time ago. It was my dad who was fickle and indecisive. If you could cheat with my dad while he was married, you should have known exactly what kind of man he was. Sophia, disoriented, left the scene. My daughter and I exchanged a look and hurried up the process of moving. My story with Raphael was over, and now it was time for me and my daughter to welcome our beautiful new life. As for Sophia and Raphael, their toxic relationship was just beginning. I'm sure their future would be filled with chaos. With Sophia relentlessly clinging to Raphael, he would never be able to start a new relationship. But you should never underestimate a woman with nothing to lose. But what does that have to do with me and my daughter? This new year, I plan to take my daughter abroad and enjoy the luxury of having money in hand for once.